Hey everyone, I'm here for another Behind the Wheel interview with one of the hardest working people in the automotive world. You may not know his face, but you probably are familiar with a lot of his work. He's the co-host of not one, but three automotive podcasts, co-hosting CarCast every Friday with one of our previous Behind the Wheel guests, Adam Carolla, and co-hosts CarCast on Wednesdays with wrestling legend and actor Bill Golberg. He's also the host of the podcast Shift and Steer, which drops a new episode every Tuesday. He's been involved in so many things in the automotive scene, in so many different ways, from producing documentary films on legendary actors and racers like Paul Newman, to contributing to automotive television shows such as Car Collectors, The Cars That Made America Famous, and more. Please welcome the Motorator himself, Matt D'Andrea. How's it going, man?
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
Oh, it's fantastic. I really appreciate you having it with us. Let's start with the probably the most obvious question. Have you always been fascinated by cars?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think a lot of, like, if you're a car guy, everybody sort of answers it the same way. Like, they started very young and they were always kind of into cars, usually from a dad or a brother or some family member. I don't think you get a lot of people going, yeah, when I was like 42 years old, I really started to fall in love with cars. It was just something about it in my 40s where, cars became my thing. So I think like a lot of us, it starts at an early age. I have an older brother. He's just a couple years older. My dad was into cars. He was into cars. And since my brother is only 2 years older, he was just old enough to get a taste of all of this before I would, but not so old that our lives were completely different. If we were 10 years apart, he and I wouldn't be into the same things. But being 2 years apart, he turns 16, he starts driving, and I'm like, that's going to be me real soon, So it was good to sort of grow up that way, I think.
Going to take it back a few years. You mentioned it a little bit, but do you remember the car you learned to drive in?
The car I learned to drive in, I remember as a kid, in Arizona, we would drive out to my grandma's house, and it was sort of a back road that was kind of a dirt road in Arizona. And I remember just sitting on my dad's lap and him teaching me to drive along that road. It was pretty straight the whole time, so it was just more about the fundamentals of driving, gas and brake, and what it means for those things as a kid. And then, as we got into middle school, I had, like I said, an older brother and some friends. I remember driving like a friend's like Toyota MR2, I believe. I think that's the car that I learned to drive stick on, but I wouldn't say it's the first car that I learned to drive in.
Being a car guy, growing up in that environment a little bit, do you remember the very first car you owned, whether it was age 16, 20, whatever it was? What was it, and what was it that made you attracted to it?
It was a 1987 Camaro. It was a V8. It was a 5-speed manual. It was red. It was T-tops. It wasn't really that fast, but it was a cool car at the time, to be 16 basically and have a V8 Camaro was pretty cool. And it was a bit older. It had some miles on it. It was in good shape, and I think I bought it just because it seemed pretty cool, and it was a good deal at the time. I forgot where we even got it from, but it was really more of just the right deal. That's why we got it.
Any other favorite cars you've owned over the years? Anyone that sticks out?
Yeah, well, soon after that car, I bought my first Mustang, not the first Mustang in the family, but in '93, the Mustang Cobra came out, like this picture behind me. And I was able to work a couple jobs and get a little bit of help from parents and bought a '93 Mustang Cobra. Now, unfortunately, living in South Florida at the time, that car got stolen and stripped and chopped up, and you couldn't even buy the title back. They like cut the unibody in half and just scrapped. Unfortunately, it got stolen, but also it's gone forever. It was so stripped out, like it's gone from from the lineup of those cars. You'll never have that VIN number again. If somebody has that VIN number, then they're lying about it, because I've got the certificate around here somewhere, the SVT certificate from Ford. But I do have two other 93 Cobra project cars, SEMA builds, that I do have now, which is kind of nice. I actually don't have a stock 93 Cobra, so maybe that'll be the next thing on my list, but I've got two modified ones, or two projects that are in the works.
Tell me a little bit about how the relationship with Adam Carolla came about. That seems like a very interesting relationship you two
Yeah,
have.
I was working in the tech industry, and through a friend there, we both worked in the internet space. We both like cars. We were doing a few track days and stuff together, and he knew Adam as kids growing up. And then when Adam started doing some podcasting, they asked me to come in and help out. And just as a car guy, I was interested in doing it. I didn't know much about the entertainment industry that he worked in, but it was something that we learned. And I think we've been working together 11 years this month.
And how does Golberg fit into all of that?
So Golberg and I did a TV show years ago, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, and we became friends doing that. And over the years, we always looked for some sort of automotive project to do, and we kicked around a few TV show ideas, and the schedules never really worked out. He lived a bit further. He lived in, like, I'm in LA, he was in San Diego, and even just the 2 hours or so to get together for a show was a little bit tough. And then he recently moved to Texas, so it made things even further apart. And then we just decided, let's do the podcast. We're doing the podcast already. We can do it remotely. And it seemed like a good idea. So we're about 2 years into doing that podcast together.
And so where does the inspiration for podcast topics come from for you guys?
For us, a lot of it's what's topical. It's in the news. So we oftentimes talk about the new cars and stuff that are coming up. With Adam's very much into vintage racing, and he has a fantastic collection of, I don't know, about 30 or so, maybe more vintage racing cars. He's got 12 of Paul Newman's original racing cars. I've been fortunate enough to be around for most of those during the acquisition of those cars, helping to curate that collection with him, which is a treat. And the collection of cars there and the memorabilia and stuff that he has is pretty impressive. It's a really, really nice collection. And so on CarCast that I do with Adam, we often touch a little bit on that, on collectability and what we think will be the future of collectability, and some vintage racing, just things that we like in general. And my show with Golberg, we touch on some news of what's going on. Like today, as we're here recording this, all the images came out for the new Ford Mustang Mach-1, which was exciting for me and exciting for Mustang fans. It'll be a great handling car. And then Bill and I also talk quite a bit about our projects. We have several project cars. I have a 95 Ford Lightning, like I said, 293 Cobras, a BMW M3, all being modified and stuff like the way we do it. He's got several cars, Dodge Challengers and Chargers, both some modern ones and some vintage cars. He's got the Lawman Mustang, which is a very famous, very special Boss 429 drag race car that was used I believe during the Vietnam era as a promotional piece for the troops to get them excited, and brought it out to different military bases and dragged it down the runways and stuff. So he's got that project happening as well. So there's some pretty fun stuff that we get to experience, and hopefully people enjoy hearing us talk about.
So tell me a little bit about Motorator and where the inspiration and the idea for that came about.
Motorator is just it's just a name. It's just sort of, I think what happened was in the radio space, a lot of people in the radio have nicknames for on the air, especially Adam Carolla's world of doing morning radio. There's a lot of different kind of nicknames. Like out here, we've got Frosty and Kevin and Bean and all these guys that have these funny nicknames. So Adam often gives names to people on his podcast that he hosts with as well. I had started a website at Motorator.com, which mostly now is just blogs about performance parts. But I haven't done too much with it. But that was the name that I was using at the time for a website, and it sort of stuck as a moniker for audio, I guess, radio and podcasting. So it's just a name that I came up with.
So switch gears a little bit and getting maybe a little personal. If I were to open your garage door at home, what would I find in there beyond what we've already talked about? Anything else exotic, mundane?
There's not. So first of all, in LA, it's tough to even own a garage. You're lucky if you have a house and someone hasn't converted the garage into, some apartment that they rent out. So parking is a big issue in LA, I would say. Fortunately, Adam has several warehouses and I get to, mooch off of that a little bit, but, I often do drive quite a few press cars from the different manufacturers, so we can talk about them on the shows and photograph them and stuff. So just this morning, they took away, after a week, the new Mustang Shelby Gt500, which I absolutely love. And then I'll be filling that spot with a Volvo, actually, an XC60, I believe they're bringing. It's a small SUV. And then mix it up to a few other things over the next few weeks. I think there's a Chevy Bolt and another Volvo wagon, and I think that's it on the list. And then the past few weeks, like I said, we had the GT500, we had the Alfa Romeo Stelvio SUV Quattrofolio. It's a 500 horsepower SUV, 505. Dodge Charger Hellcat wide body was the week before that. And then in my garage, of course, I have a 1995 Ford Lightning. That's the current project. And on the podcast and social media, I've been doing some work on it, modifying it, and then bringing it back and talking about it and driving it a bit, and then going back and doing a few other things. So instead of like the Mustangs, which is sort of a big project that kind of sits in a garage for a few years, this one I kind of wanted to get in it and work on it, and then get in it and then work on it and go back and forth. So my friends over at Galpin Autosports right now are doing a few upgrades right now, which I'm excited about, because one of them is a big steering upgrade. We're changing the very sloppy conventional steering in that truck to a quick ratio steering box, but it's all custom done. We cut out the frame where the steering box mounts, welded in new plates, mounted a new box. Should be done in about a week, and could be a game changer on how that truck handles it.
If you had to pin it down, any all-time favorite car to drive that you had?
Yeah, in the past few years, and it's an interesting question because it's such a broad term. You can narrow it down to SUV and different price ranges or whatever. But the two cars that I particularly love are the Mclaren 720S. I've driven a few of those, the coupes and the roadsters. Was able to film a bunch of stuff in the car, so I had sort of a closed course with it as well. That car is just fantastic. In the supercar world, I just think there's few cars that are better. The 720S is incredibly fast. It's easy to drive. It makes good sounds. It just gets a lot of attention, and it is just fun to drive all the time. And then also the recent Shelby GT500, one of my favorite cars. I just spent a week with it here around town, but I was also invited to an event in Vegas a few months back when Ford debuted the car, to drive it up in the canyons and then hit the road course at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and then hit the drag strip with it as well. And I love that car. That could be probably the next car that I buy. I'm really kind of leaning toward getting that new GT500.
So any particular destinations you love driving to, or roads you like to drive on? I'm assuming there are some in the Southern California area that are rather fun.
Being in LA, we have a lot of great roads all through the canyons off of PCH. Malibu canyons are always pretty good. Sometimes it gets a little traffic heavy So you have to kind of time it right, or even go, late at night just to get a feel for the car. We have Angeles Crest, which is a great road as well. I was just on there recently with the Dodge Charger Hellcat wide body, which is a fun road. But you don't have to go very far in LA to hit a pretty good road, which is nice.
Getting away from work, and you're a busy man. Anything that you like to do when you get away from work? Any hobbies? Anything that's maybe non-car related?
Not really. There's not much that's happening non-car related right now. When we're not working, we try to get in the garage and do some work on the cars, and that's about it. It's interesting is Golberg and Adam are both the same way. Golberg lives on a huge ranch, so he's got animals and things to attend to there. But most of the time, he's in the garage tooling on his cars and kind of figuring out what's going to be next for him. And when Adam's not in the podcast, he walks over to the next building where his car collection is, and he's messing around with his cars. He's got a couple of guys there that are working on stuff and fabbing stuff from scratch and painting and doing all kinds of stuff. So between us, our downtime still is cars. I really can't think of anything that we're really doing outside of the car world.
Any final thoughts, Matt, anything that I missed, anything you want to talk about?
We're in an interesting time right now where we aren't able to go to many events, and who knows what's going to happen with the SEMA show. They say it's on, and then maybe it's not, and LA Auto Show, and Goodwood event in the UK is gone for now. Monterey Car Week, it's very sad to hear that that's completely canceled, including the race. So my thoughts on that are, let's do what we can in the virtual world. There's some virtual meetups, which are kind of fun to see, but just be patient, and we'll get through all this stuff, and we'll be able to get out to those events soon. And when we are able to go, definitely go. We're big fans of going to the live events. And one of the things we did on CarCast that Golberg and I did last year was we worked with several racing organizations and sent people to races. We gave out tickets and some backstage stuff to NASCAR at Bristol. We gave out tickets to NHRA in Pomona. We even gave out some tickets to IndyCar at Laguna Seca. And we'd love to be able to do that again, because I think people should go out and be able to experience some racing events and some of these car shows live. So hopefully soon we can all get back out there to some of these events, and we'd love to see you guys out there.
That's really it for us here, Matt. I just want to thank you very much for a very entertaining glimpse into your life, your passion for cars, your driving scene, and we can't wait to see what's next on the horizon.
Thank you so much. Like I said, the podcasts are all up on iTunes, and the website is CarCast Show, and Motorator is all of my social media. You can see all the fun stuff we're posting up there.